Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Game Master and welcome to my channel. Now I played the original hyperdimensional Neptunia game last year and reviewed it and I enjoyed it somewhat and it did become quite a bit of a guilty pleasure. Only problem, every time the game won me over with its charm, it decided it had to do something creepy for the sake of doing something creepy just to piss me off. Still, I liked it enough to give another game in the series a go, Mega Tag-Dimensional Blanc plus Neptune vs. Zombie, and that one was god-awful. Don't get me wrong, it's not broken horrible, more like the game was trying to be cheap and cute without realizing how to do cheap and cute properly. The story in these games are beyond moronic, but done so to be satirical and funny. That game sidelined the fourth wall breaking Neptune to focus on Blanc and her bad storytelling, and what we got was just a bad story. So how did we do in this third round with me trying their latest game, Super Dimensional Neptune vs. Sega Hard Girls? Actually, this is the best one I've played yet. It balances its moronic sense of humor with a lot of good satire, can be charming, and doesn't ever get too anime creepy. So let's check it out, because despite it doing a lot better in some regards than the original Neptune, there is some things that I still have to complain about. I guess when it comes to the story, in a lot of these games, they all happen in other dimensions, meaning they can reset the relationships between the characters and their roles in the game just a little bit. In case you're wondering who the main character in this game is, it's not Neptune despite the title. It's actually IF, the straight woman of the team who has to deal with Neptune's craziness and Kampa's idiocy. And by the way, Kampa is missing in this one. It's just IF and that's the main focus. Anyways, the world she lives in this one is a wasteland that was long destroyed due to the goddesses battling against the Sega Hard Girls, constantly leaving it in a state of ruin. Oh, I guess I should explain what the Sega Hard Girls are, because I had to Google them too. Sega Hard Girls is a light novel manga series in Japan in which all the Sega consoles have somehow become super wacky and colorful goddesses. Which is completely different from this series, I know. Anyways, IF rescues a young woman named Segami from falling and finds the lost library which she was searching for due to research on how her world became this way. She basically wants to dig up the lost history on what destroyed the world, so she at least can satisfy her curiosity. That said, not long after arriving at the librarian Histoire noticed that history is disappearing from her library due to an invasion of a monster called the Time Eater. In order to stop it from erasing history, IF and the mysterious Segami, who can also transform into the Sega Hard Girl due to unknown reasons, have to go back to the 4 different eras and investigate the problems in each area to stop the Time Eater and to also try to change IF's world back to the peaceful, serene place it should be. And that's pretty much the plot, as each area has a Sega Hard Girl battling one of Neptune's family. Yeah, the goddesses representing Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo consoles have been sidelined. Each of these are based on Neptune's family because Neptune is basically the artificial Sega. Basically real Sega hardware fighting against the fake stand-in Sega hardware that the Neptune series created for itself. Anyways, IF and Segami have to find a way to stop the fighting. As far as the humor goes, I was first worried because, again, IF is the straight man and not known to be the go-to character for the humor. So how do they accomplish this? Well, they give Segami a bit of a character where her ideas can be extreme, and it gives IF the chance to react to them because she thinks she's crazy. But they are also not dumb enough this time to sideline the meta-humor character. And the way they do it is kind of unique and also speaks to this game's cheapness as well. After a few missions involving trying to stop the fighting against Neptune and Sega Saturn, IF and Sigma fail to stop the battle between them and the history around them starts to erase itself. And yeah, I bet Sega wishes the Sega Saturn could erase itself. It's because of that console that Sega had to get out of the hardware business. Dreamcast may have been the last, but their screw-ups with the Sega Saturn really damaged them to the point where they really couldn't sustain another console run. Anyways, because Neptune saves them from being deleted, she manages to somehow merge with IF's time-traveling bike, meaning she can't really contribute much to the actual story because she's stuck in the bike, but she's still around whenever the game needs a meta joke or two, and she can still be funny. From pointing out to the cheapness of the game, to pointing out that Segame's amnesia cliche is being pushed way too far, to pointing out people might have just been expecting a boss fight in an area where the game doesn't have one, because, well, most games would have a boss fight. I even anticipated a boss fight and grinded right before jumping into the area, only to have that pointed out. Neptune is really funny. I will warn you that the game does keep away from being creepy like the original Neptune. That doesn't mean the game isn't without some really dirty jokes. In fact, ones that I'm surprised they got away with a teen rating while telling. They're really funny, so I don't mind them too much. I only mind stupid stuff when it's either being creepy for the sake of being creepy or if it just feels cheap. None of the jokes or humor feels that way here, so it's really good, and I did enjoy the story in this game, regardless of how stupid and moronic it is. I do have one quick complaint about the story, though. Even though it does hit a good satire when it comes to how fanboys can really hurt the industry, the fact that they destroyed IF's world due to their fighting and stuff is pretty funny and pretty good satire on the industry. I do have to say that I am disappointed that while there's plenty of satire on the consoles themselves, consoles don't make an experience, but rather the games do. And this will be something that I'll bring up in the gameplay a little bit more, but the game does lack a little bit of a satirical edge when it comes to Sega software. There's no real good jokes on Sonic the Hedgehog or Phantasy Star or anything like that, which would have really helped this game. It's my one minor complaint with the story. Like I said, it's still charming and I still enjoyed it, but I thought I should throw that one in there too. There's not much satire on the Sega games themselves, so if you come in here expecting a lot of deep satire on Sega video games, you're going to be disappointed. Plenty of good jokes about the consoles, but none on the games, and that is a little bit disappointing. While the story is really improved, I really can't say much about the gameplay being improved. My complaints here are pretty much identical to the complaints I had with the first Neptune game. And yes, having Neptune complain about the cheapness of the game is funny, it's also irritating when you're going through it. While it's nice to see they upgraded IF's design since she's the main character, a lot of the areas and a lot of the enemies for the most part have been seen in other Neptune games, especially the first one. Hello, Idea Factory, you guys had Sega backing you here. You couldn't use some of those funds to, I don't know, come up with some new enemies based upon Sega properties? Why am I battling generic warp pipes from the Super Mario Bros. Games, which makes sense when Blonde, who's a Nintendo girl, is front and center of this area, but makes no sense since this game is so Sega-oriented. Why am I not seeing Sonic the Hedgehog related areas and enemies? And again, I have been through this freaking factory before. It's the exact same one from the first Neptune game I played last year. Some forest areas are the same as the forest areas in the first game, and it's actually the first area in this one too. Although I will make some points making it look destroyed in the just before the apocalypse era that IF visits later in the game. And a few areas do let you also climb on ladders now, but that just means there's a few side areas off to explore. Nothing really new is made out of these new abilities. The combat is okay in this one. Just to say it's not bad, it's just merely okay. It's turn-based and combo-based, kind of. Yeah, no more create your combos, but rather it's just a bar doing special moves, regular attacks, moving, or using items. Raises the bar. When it hits red, the turn for that character it's over. It's a bit too simple, but I will give it this. There is some strategy here. The more the bar fills, the longer it is until your next turn. So ending your turn early can sometimes let you move that character again sooner. Also doing super moves that kill enemies increase your SPs for special moves, so there is a little bit more strategy to it. Another wrinkle about this game is how the special missions are taken up. Granted, this was originally a Vita game, so it's got the portable missions given out by Histoire. But each mission takes up a turn on the clock, and if you don't select and complete a mission by a certain time, the Time Eater gobbles up the mission and gains more power from it. After all the turns are up, you are forced to fight it, and you'll probably get your butt kicked, and then Sega Me resets the timer from the beginning somehow. While this is annoying, it does add a wrinkle into the fighting and final boss. Each mission you complete weakens the boss, so while you're leveling up, completing the mission causes the final boss to level down until you're strong enough to take him on. Overall, the gameplay isn't terrible, but there's nothing unique, and the fact that nothing is done to really improve the series and they don't bother even changing the stage design around is a little disheartening. I know that it's the story that is the main draw for its fan, but rehashing things like this is just lazy. Did their stage designer quit halfway through the first one? Because it needs some new content in this area, and the fact that it's not getting any kind of makes it tedious. I do have one more complaint with the gameplay in this game, and that is, of course, like the first Neptune game I played, the balance and the difficulty can be a little bit uneven. Even worse because it lets you pick your path. Sometimes you're not always told what area is going to be the harder areas. You're told which area is more important as far as weakening the time eater, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the easier one or the harder one. And sometimes you can just get into a conflict with a boss that is way too OP for you to handle, and they can strike you down in one hit, or in some of the more frustrating cases, as you start to whittle them down, they can start doing their super moves, their EX moves, and all these other super powerful moves that can knock 2/3 of a character's health down and attack multiple characters at the same time, 2 or 3 times in a turn before you're allowed to move, meaning it's basically game over, and sometimes beating a boss depends more on luck than skill, so that's still also a weakness to this game. When it comes to the looks of this game, we do have some nice updates to IF's designs to make her look a little older and more mature than she did in previous Neptune games. Other than that, we have pretty much the same cel-shaded look that we had in the original game that I reviewed last year. The character models for the storybook cutscenes are decent enough and well animated enough for what they are. No complaints there. That said, again, some cheapness was used. Neptune in bike form is just a bike. They don't ever really animate her, so the most hyperactive character now requires absolutely no animation at all. It's almost genius in the amount of cheapness that this game kind of just exudes all over the place. The Sega Heart Girls fit in perfectly next to the Neptune characters, although very little improvements were made for the rest of the Neptune characters, so that is a bit of a disappointment. With the lack of the character upgrades and the fact that they reuse so many assets from the previous game, it does make the game look really dull. When it comes to the music in this game, it's pretty much the exact same thing from the previous Neptune games. It's an okay soundtrack, but it's nothing really to write home about. The English dub, though, is well done with voice actors like Kate Higgins, Melissa Bond, and Stephanie Shea doing some of the lead vocals. They have done a lot of dubbed anime in the past, and they do a pretty decent job with these characters here, so I have no complaints when it comes to the English vocals. The story in Super Dimensional Neptunia vs. Sega Heart Girls is really funny and just loaded with charm. But the gameplay is too much cookie-cutter approach, and it basically uses a lot of things from the first Neptune remake I played last year. What, this is 5 RPGs later, and they still haven't bothered changing anything when it comes to a gameplay, and that's a problem. I can kind of see why game trailers wanted the series to die. I would be kind of bored if I was forced to play through the same game over and over again on a time strain that reviewers do. Still, if you're a fan of the series, I would say wait until this is on sale for less than $10 before getting it, because while it does have a great story, it's all it has going for it. The gameplay's not bad, but it's nothing really new or exciting, and just so many things are being reused from the past series for me to really recommend it for anything more than that, unfortunately. This is Tommy the Game Master, thanking you for listening. I'll see you guys later.